What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Kill Shot DFS Army UFC Breakdown Podcast. We're talking bets, we're talking DraftKings plays, we're talking fantasy, everything you need to know about UFC Fight Night Vettori versus Cannonier coming up this Saturday. You know, it's Father's Day weekend, boys.
That it is. All right.
You know what that means for me? That just means I might get like a solid block of a few hours to watch the fights undisturbed. That's my gift that I
there
request
you go.
every year. I just say, can I just have quiet alone time?
Yeah, I feel that.
We're simple creatures. You know what I mean?
Why is that?
I enjoy
enough for
work,
me?
because it's quiet alone time. So
that's all I asked for. That's my Father's Day gift. I'm like, guys, just give me some quiet time alone.
You should say it just like that too.
Yeah. Now, so this is a monster card. 14 fights. It's crazy. A lot of fights, but a couple good fights here. Fighters that we're familiar with, and I've already got a bunch of bets down on this card, and that's exciting. Last week we talked about betting Ursig on this show. Comes through. We talked about another. Who was the other female underdog on the card?
Double J. Jasmine,
right?
Jasudavicius, yeah.
That was my kill shot.
Huge.
Jasmine Jasudavicius. She put you in stitches, and now in her pockets, she possessed mad riches. And I possess mad riches too for my bet on Jasmine plus 250. So we nailed some big time underdogs. Diana Belbita,
Charles Oliveira,
Dubronx,
Dude,
of course,
wow.
I bet that too. But Belbita, listen, we got some info in the DFS Army Discord on Saturday that caused me personally to go very heavy on Belbita. And that was, of course, that Maria Oliveira has not been training. She's been doing reality dating shows in Brazil and does not give two fucks about the UFC anymore. We found that out like Saturday. I was like, Maria Oliveira exposure, 0. Of course, my fate of Ayman Zahabi just ruined all of it anyway. I could not get first. Came in second. Second nuts. First loser, as we like to call it around here. Does not help you when you get second nuts, Big Marley.
I don't think anybody got nobody in the big contest.
Not the nuts, but there obviously there was a winning score.
Mm-hmm.
I think the actual nuts left a ton of salary on the table.
1,300.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 48.7. It's the first time since I've been tracking that we've ever had that as a winning salary. Scorigami on Saturday.
Scorigami.
Yep.
Nothing wrong with that. I actually went back to the optimizer and tried to replicate that lineup, and without cheating, it was tricky, but not impossible. Using fantasy points in a win, I was able to get it to pop up. So once again, fantasy points in a win versus mean projection saves the day. But we've got a new fresh card to talk about. We're breaking it all down. Bets on the table. It starts really gross on this card, boys. It starts really ugly with Modestas Bukauskas taking on Zach Powga, and good grief is all I got to say about this fight. Good grief. So Bukauskas is a minus 197 favorite. Powga plus 172. Fight goes to decision minus 150. So that being said, Big Marley, man, I haven't seen what's good about Zach Powga yet. So I would like you to describe to me what he does that's good. We know Modestas already. He's been around, he's not very good either, but.
Yeah, I don't think Zach Powga is very good. But I also don't think Bukauskas is very good either. So he has that going for him. I think Bukauskas is the better overall striker in this matchup, but he's first round knockout or bust at 9K because he's just not going to land enough volume to get there in a decision. And he's also not going to be the one looking to wrestle. So I don't think on a 14 fight card, a second round knockout will even cut it. So I'm probably going to fade Bukauskas and hope that the first round knockout does not come. I like the other 9K range spots more than him. And I think that Zach Powga can keep it real close on the feet. His striking's decent. He's got okay boxing, but he's the one with the wrestling advantage, in my opinion. And if he has success with the wrestling, I think he can score 10x if he wins a decision. Finishes are great too, of course, but I like targeting guys who can score 10x in a decision. I think Powga can do that. but he had 10 minutes of control time against the cage in his last fight against Jordan Wright, who has no real ground game, and he couldn't land a single takedown. So it doesn't give me a whole lot of hope, but I'm picking the underdog to get the win. So it's Powga or pass for me. I'm completely fine with the pass, but he's cheap enough to where I'll probably be around field weight on Powga, and I like him in cash games as well if you're playing cash.
And I feel like you don't knock out Jordan Wright, you got to go. I feel like Modestas Bukauskas knocks out Jordan Wright in round 2.
Yeah, probably.
Any numbers here?
Jordan Wright for the first time ever in that fight.
Well, that was his only ever decision. Like, if that was that a fight that happened for a UFC, because we would have been loaded up on that fight and all would have just been like, fuck,
Funnily enough, Wright actually outscored Powga if you take bonus points out. He outscored him by 1.5 points.
This Powga guy has not been impressive at all. Any reason to play him? Like, I know, Marley, you said he has the grappling, but like he hasn't used it in the UFC.
Yeah, I don't see him having like 100-point potential with his grappling, but at 7,200, I think he could score 10. I think he get like 80 points in a decision win here, which I'm okay with, but I don't think that's going to be on the optimal lineup. So I'm just not going to get too much exposure there. It would be more like, oh, sweet, Powga fits as my last spot in the lineup. Perfect, I'm done.
Monk, anything interesting here from a numbers point of view other than the fadiness of it all?
Yeah, that you nailed it. The fading of Bukauskas. I mean, 9K for this guy. I mean, he put up 97 against Andreas Michailidis at light heavyweight back in 2020, but then he fought Tyson Pedro, and I actually picked him to win, but he only scored 51. So, I mean, there is really nothing to write home about here. This should be a decision. I mean, in his career, Bukauskas, half of his wins have come in the first round, and also one of his losses in the UFC, but or I guess that's just the UFC, so only one. He would have beaten Michailidis. Must have been a doctor stoppage or something at the end of the first
I remember
round.
that fight. Do you remember what happened there?
Opened and
No.
the other guy, not Bonessa, whatever that other guy's name was,
sat and he fell
because of it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they called the fight, thought he was fucked up.
Remember what was going on right before that happened? Bukauskas was dropping, north-south
12-6
elbows on his head during an attempted takedown.
Oh, that's
It was like,
right.
oh, we're going around 2, and then the cage door opened. He did the wobble, and they were like, oh, he's knocked out, and it was a little weird. It's not clear that he was knocked out.
Yeah, either way, I mean, 9K. Bukauskas should win this. Like, I'm far less than impressed with Zach Powga. Like, going to a decision, like one of you guys said with Jordan Wright's nothing to write home about, but losing to Muhammad Usman, everybody, I mean, I'm pretty sure, let's see. Actually, no, Usman, Powga was minus 250 in that fight, and he lost to Usman, it looks like. So 7,200, I'm complete with Marley. The only value here is on Powga if he scores 70, 80, 85 points tops in a decision. But even so, 14-fight card, I mean, that's not going to land you optimal very many times. Like, you got to finish Bukauskas early or do something, get those takedowns, which you have not shown yet in the UFC. So hopefully he does that. But like you said, Marley, if he couldn't do that against Jordan Wright, like, is he going to do that against Bukauskas? So, yeah, unless somebody gets a crazy Ayman Zahabi type knockout here, I don't see why I would be rostering much of either side, but especially the Modestas side.
Just to reiterate the point here on the numbers, there's nothing about Modestas's volume or lack of grappling that says let's roster this guy on DraftKings. There's nothing about his history that says let's play him as a minus 200 favorite. That's absolutely bananas. No chance. And even with Powga, I don't see it. I know Marley said there's like 10x upside. I'm not even sure. Yeah, 10x, sure, because he could score 75. But like, even if Zach Powga wins, man, this guy sucks, and he doesn't finish Jordan Wright. He's not finishing Bukauskas. At least he's not doing it quickly. So that's a fadeable spot. I'm gonna fade it. Get out. No interest. Now, there's so many great fights on this card from a fantasy perspective. There are explosive scorers on this card, like the type that you dream about. And this next fight includes 2 of them. Right? And which way do you go? I don't know. But Ronnie Lawrence, he'll burn your food like Florence. He'll run up in your crib like his name was Search Warrants. Taking on Dan Argueta, with Lawrence coming in as a minus 180 favorite and Argueta coming back at plus 155. And Monk, you're going to have a field day with the numbers and the inside the distance scoring with these two guys. But let's take a look here. Fight ends. Fight goes the distance minus 200. Big Marley, I'm not upset about it. I want 3 rounds of whatever these two guys are about. So talk about their fighting styles. I will, spoiler alert, these are maniacal grapplers, both of them. And Big Marley, I will also like you to let me know which one is better at it.
So great fight. One of the best fights to target on DraftKings. Not an all-in fight for me, but I definitely want this in more. I mean, probably like 3/4 of my lineups, if not more. Lawrence is just a guy that we love for DraftKings because he's nonstop pace. He can go out there, land 10 takedowns in 15 minutes and not slow down. And in his last decision win, he scored 131 DraftKings points. Like, you just love to target those kind of fighters. Anyone who can score 100+ points in a decision is what I like to target. But in his last fight, he got out-wrestled badly, and Argueta is a decent wrestler. And in his last win, he scored 101 points in a decision win with a wrestling-heavy performance. So I don't know. It's hard to tell with Lawrence. I think he's more of an MMA wrestler than anything. And Argueta probably grew up wrestling. But I just love the work rate from Lawrence. So he's going to be my preferred play in this one. If he could beat Argueta to the punch, then I think he's the one that can win all 3 rounds. But I want a lot of Argueta exposure too. I want to be around field weight on him as well, because we just saw the way to beat Lawrence, and I think Argueta can have that same pace. He's just not as good as Kakramanov. So I'm not putting that much stock into that last loss for Lawrence. But it's an underdog I want to have heavy exposure to, because he could score 100 points in a decision here and get a finish. I doubt we get a finish here, but that's great too. But I like to target guys who don't even need the finish and can make the optimal lineup. Both of these guys could do that. Lawrence will be close to a core play for me, though, because I'm picking him to get the win. So I see this being like 50% Lawrence, 25% Argueta, something like that. Cash games, give me Lawrence as well.
Just take a look at some of the numbers. I just popped up their UFC stats on screen, right? And, Argueta has 2 fights and Lawrence has a bunch. So these numbers are kind of, let's call them legit, right? Lawrence averaging 7 takedowns per 15 minutes, with Argueta averaging 2.5 takedowns, more like normal, but still good, right? Both of these guys are not the best at stopping a takedown, although I think most of Lawrence's lack of takedowns being stopped were all in the one fight. So it really comes down, I think, to who can get the takedowns. Like, is it possible, before I jump to Monk, is it possible that it doesn't set up this way, but is it possible the grappling kind of negates each other and they just kind of strike? Or both guys with their 50% takedown defense, is it takedown, stand up, another one? Is it a back and forth affair? Like, how does this go?
Yeah, I don't think that it will negate each other and it'll be a striking match. I do expect to see a lot of grappling here, but it could negate each other where Lawrence gets 5 takedowns and Argueta gets 4. The winner only scores 80 points because it's so back and forth. That's more why it's not all in my opinion. I would be surprised if this was a 15-minute striking match, though. If it was, give me Lawrence in that.
Yeah, I think Lawrence is a better striker. Monk, what do you say? These guys have incredible metrics.
Yeah, they absolutely do. Marley broke down great, as of course I say multiple times throughout every show, and I mean it every time. But yeah, I love this fight for DraftKings. I am also on the Lawrence side. I was on Lawrence last time. And let me just say, it is an absolute crime that Said Yakub Kakramanov is not in the UFC currently. I heard maybe it had nothing to do with his performances and possibly had something to do with gambling. I'm not trying to start rumors, but that is something that I did hear. I can't start a rumor if I'm the one that heard it, but that's beside the point. It's a crime. He should be back in the division. Hopefully we'll see him soon. That was a fantastic fight, really. And Lawrence allowed 10 freaking takedowns in that fight. He's got 14, 6 against Mana Martinez, 8 against Vince Cachero. That's a long way of saying no matter what happens, there are tons of points being scored in Ronnie Lawrence fights because he's either doing the scoring or his opponents are the ones taking him down, getting the ground time. And the good thing is in these fights that either both him and his opponents rather are popping back up. So you get that rinse and repeat option, 5 points, 5 points, 5 points on these takedowns, which is really important. And, like Marley said, the longer this one goes, you're going to want that. Because 4 takedowns over 3 rounds is not the greatest thing in the world, but 6 to 8 like we've seen historically for either one of these guys, more Lawrence rather, will do well scoring, especially at 8,700. So in both of Lawrence's wins, he's made the optimal lineup so far. And Argueta has looked pretty good in his fight against Nick Aguirre. 4 takedowns landed there. He looked decent against Damon Jackson too. And Jackson just came out here and manhandled one of the guys that's on, that we'll be talking about later, in Pat Sabatini, which was a big surprise to everybody. So I love this fight for DraftKings. I think the winner scores well. Like Marley, I'm not going to go 100%, but it's the complete opposite of the first fight. I will have a ton of this fight, probably like 60-40. I think I'm going to be a bit higher on Argueta than Marley was, just because of the salary at 7,500. The dude doesn't have to score a mazillion points to make optimal lineups. So I'll hedge a little bit with that. 60-40 Lawrence to Argueta, but I love this fight for DraftKings.
Yeah, not much more to say here. Maniacal grapplers both. Neither guy has great takedown defense. That's just a combination that I'm looking for all the time. I don't know how to know which guy is better at the takedowns. Even when Lawrence fought Saeed Yakub, we were kind of like,
it was shocking. It was pretty shocking.
Whose grappling will be better. Yeah. Sometimes it's one guy. You don't know until you put him in. One guy's a little stronger. One guy, I don't know how to know that. So I'm going to assume Lawrence has a little bit better striking based on what I've seen. So I think it's lined correctly. Minus 150 sounds about right. If Argueta does his thing and maybe is a better actual wrestler, then we will, he's going to win. It's that simple. Whoever's the better grappler, probably going to win this, but they're both going to try to grapple, and it is DraftKings gold. All right. Next up, let's go to the side here. Actually, before we even do next up, reminder, if you're enjoying the show, let us know as we're going along, what's your pick in that fight? You like Lawrence? You like Argueta? Let us know. And also, of course, smash that like button. It helps a lot if you enjoy these shows, and we want to bring you more of this type of content. Make sure you're hitting the like button, letting us know that you're out there. All right. Next up, we've got Teresa Bladea taking on Gabriela Fernandez. And Bladea is a massive minus 240 favorite here with the comeback on Gabriela, plus 191. Not a whole lot of props available for this fight as of yet, which is kind of weird. But fight goes the distance, minus 125. Fight inside the distance, minus 110. So about 50-50 odds to finish. Big Marley, how do you see this one playing out? Unmute. Yeah, I got you.
There we go. Yeah, I think Bladea has to get takedowns here. Really, in every UFC fight she's going to be in, all she really does well is get takedowns. She's good on top control. She can get ground and pound finishes, maybe a submission when she's in a dominant position. But she's just really strong, and she's able to get top control. That's all she's really good at. I don't think her striking's good at all. I don't think she has great cardio either. So I definitely give Fernandez the striking edge here. And if she can stuff takedowns, I think she probably knocks Bladea out at some point. Or even if Bladea gasses out from wrestling heavy, she could knock her out late. But if Bladea's game plan works and she's able to get takedowns each round like Jazzu Vicious was against this girl, then she has 100-point upside in the decision. So I'm cool with both sides of this fight. I would rather target the favorite in Bladea. 9,500 is a lot to pay, especially when we have Tsarukyan on the card for a record 9,800. I think she's more of a good pivot away from him in GPPs, but I like him more in cash games. So it's really a salary thing this weekend. What can I afford? I'm not sure, but I would like to get Bladea if I can afford her. If I need the salary saver in Fernandez, I'm cool with that. I think she has 100-point upside with an early knockout, but I don't think it would be early. I think Bladea does have early success here, and it would be more likely later in the fight if Fernandez does get the TKO. So I'll have a little bit of exposure there. I expect her to be low owned, so I'll be around field weight or so. But Bladea, I don't know yet. It'll just be how much I can afford. Maybe 20, 25%. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, Bladea's loss to Silva, is aging really, really well. Her loss to Natalia Silva. The only negative with Bladea for me is that she didn't fight anybody else. So, it's just a whole bunch of nobodies. And then she takes the L to Natalia Silva. But I think as we all kind of just tape studied that fight because of Silva's recent fight, Yeah, Bladea was doing pretty well in that one. And we were kind of thinking maybe Silva's not as good as we think because this Bladea person was hanging in there and kind of winning that fight. Monk, do you think Bladea's got what it takes to score enough?
I personally am probably going to be lower than Marley on this one. I can't justify 9,500 for someone that literally didn't even score 2 points a minute. I don't care who it's against. I mean, I wouldn't play somebody like Derek Lewis at 9,500 and a lot of times as well. So I just don't trust Bladea. She's got 7 pro fights. Both of these women are 0-1 against decent competition. I will agree that Natalia Silva is a great a decent loss, I should say. But also, Jasmine Jasudavicius turns out is a decent loss as well to Gabriela Fernandez. Not a very close fight against Jasudavicius there, as she was taken down 4 times and controlled for 77% of the fight here. But I think there's openings for the underdog to come through. As you know, love me some women's flyweight, so that is going to up my exposure a little bit, but probably on the Fernandez side. I'm going to go with one of the worst salaries you can possibly play and get me some exposure. I want to be over the field on Gabby Hernandez this week, hoping for, a first round finish. But even if she goes to decision at 6,700, we've got a great chance, actually 100% chance, as we discussed last week, of making the optimal lineup historically. So 9,500, I also love that salary for sure. But man, how could you trust Bladea? Like, of course she could come out here and get a first round finish, and then you want to have that exposure. But my God, on such a big card, I mean, I like that you did say only 20 to 25%. I do actually like that exposure, so I won't be too far under that. But usually I go crazy on 9,500. Not this week for sure.
Yeah, I just thought, like, with her style,
yeah,
if it's successful, it's probably going to score okay in the UFC, especially against this girl who has nothing to offer off her back.
Yeah, that is very, like, getting controlled for 77% of 15 minutes is a long ass time. That's for sure.
Let's not ignore the fact that we are discussing paying 9,500 for someone who's on a card where Arman Tsarukyan is on the same card for 9,800.
Yeah, don't get me started on that. Oh my God.
I definitely prefer Tsarukyan, but I just don't know how much I'll be able to pay for 9,800. So that's
or
what
95. 95 ain't that much better. It's just a couple hundred away.
Like, if I'm building lineups and I'm like, shit, I just can't get there, but I got 9,500, then I'm cool with Bladea.
She's playable. She could also get a submission here and get a finish early. Like, that is absolutely in the realm of shit that could happen. As a matter of fact, in most of her previous fights, or at least a bunch of them, she got first and second. Like, she's been a finisher again against 0 opponents, but she has been finishing some of her opponents. So it's something to keep in mind. But yeah, I'm not going to get super excited about Bladea. And I think Fernandez lost to Jasmine. Jazzy Jazz looks good right now. Has aged kind of well. Let's put it that way. Not a fight, though, that for me personally, I'm super excited about for a DraftKings play. I just won't have a lot of it. So, that's what it is. I just won't have a ton of that particular fight. All right, guys, moving on. Remember, hit that like button. If you are liking the content, let us know who do you think is going to win between Bladea and Fernandez. Drop a comment in the comment section. Hit us up with it. All right. This one is interesting. Felipe Bunes taking on Zhumagulov, with Bunes coming in around plus 140 as the underdog, and Zalgas a minus 165 favorite in this fight. Zalgas has not had a very successful UFC run, but maybe it'll turn around here. He's a favorite. A fight goes the distance, minus 175. There are some interesting notes here, but listen, my spidey sense started tingling the second I see Zalgas, Mr. L, as a favorite. So I'm like, wait a second here. This guy's got a lot of losses for a favorite. Big Marley. I normally don't like to bet on favorites at minus 170 who have lost like 6 of their last 7 fights. So what the heck is going on here?
Yeah, but he could have won all but like 2 of them, 1 or 2 of them, to be honest with you. I think he should have won 2 of the losses at least that he had. So I think that's going into play. And then this Bunes, I don't even know how to say his name. Bunes kid, I mean, he's a newcomer. He hasn't really fought anybody special either. So I kind of think it makes sense for him to be a favorite, but I mean, not that wide. I think it should be pretty close to pick 'em. I thought Felipe looked decent everywhere. I would imagine that Zhumagulov has a wrestling edge here, but I kind of give Bunes a slight striking edge. I think he's going to be taller and longer, and he looked dangerous on the feet. I think he's the more dangerous fighter of the two anywhere, so he's more likely to get a finish. But if this goes the distance, like Vegas thinks it will, at like minus 170, I just don't think either one of them scores very well. If Bunes gets a decision win, he probably doesn't even 10x. And same thing with Zhumagulov. I think he's playing for like a ceiling of 10x here if he's not able to get a finish. So I'm going to try and get away from this fight, but it will be Felipe or pass for me. I'm picking the underdog to get the win. I just think it's going to be a real close toss-up fight. So give me Felipe. He's another sixth spot in my lineup type of guy, though. I'm not going to make it a point to target him, but I think he's got finishing potential, and that could put him on the optimal lineup. So I don't want to fully fade him, especially since he's an underdog. I'm picking to get the win.
I like it. Monk, what do you think here between Bunes and Zhumagulov? Zhumagulov, he's got a good stat, losses. He's like 90% consistent.
That is true, but the haircut, man, talk about consistent.
Love the haircut.
You can set your watch to those bangs, I tell you right now. 8,500. I don't love the salary. He's like almost 700 more than his average over the past 5. As you have stated, he's 1-4 in his past 5. I think he's 1-5. Yeah, in the entirety of his UFC.
And I want to be fair to the guy, so let's actually bring these up.
Yeah, a lot of splits.
The splits. Amir Albazi's part of it, but Raulian Paiva is not exactly, a world beater in the UFC. And I have to say, he did not look good against Charles Johnson either. And I'm not sure if Charles Johnson is particularly good. No. So he's not just losing. Amir Albazi, fine, but, Jeff Molina, I mean, some of these losses are not that great. Jeff Molina looks pretty good, but, I'm not sure about Charles Johnson.
I think it was Johnson, Molina, and Paiva fights. You could have given him the win. Like 3 different judges, it could have all been Zhumagulov wins.
If you continue back in this guy's career, he does this all the time. And that's why you can never bet on Zhalgas Zhumagulov, even when he's up against zeros. Okay, 6-5. I know it's a ways back, but 6-5, Zahifa Shang, who was basically a complete scrub, he's losing a decision. This kid doesn't know how to fight for the judges. He loses split decisions frequently.
That's why he got the Patty haircut, though. Judges like Patty.
They do like that. The Patty he does have the hairstyle. That looks cool. I mean,
how many of his wives had to be like, ugh, they just have to accept it? Like all of them? You think even one of his wives likes that hair?
Kazakhstan. I mean, come on. If you're from Kazakhstan and you're rocking that hairstyle, man, you got to be on the show. Like he's basically Borat come to life.
Yeah, I usually can't talk shit about people's haircuts, but still.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, did these guys score enough? Zhalgas he's just a decision machine. Is he worth rostering at 8,500?
I don't think so. You made a comment about how he's not worth betting. I do this thing I call historic profitability. If you put $100 on each fighter for each of their UFC fights, how much would you have won or lost? Zhalgas, you would have bet $600. You'd be down $464.29, which is a negative 77.4 ROI. Just heartbreaking. I mean, he's one of the lowest on the entire card. Actually, he is the lowest of all the fighters, other than the ones that have just one fight, because if they lost 100%. Obviously, but yeah, minus 77 is a super tough look for my guy ZZ Top over there. But yeah, I don't like it. I mean, he scored 94 against whoever we were talking about, Jerome Rivera. I think Bunes has a chance here, and I'm just calling him Bunes. I don't know how to pronounce it either, but I call Amanda Nunes, so I'm calling Felipe Bunes. 7,700. I'll take a chance. I like his height advantage. I love his reach advantage here. I like how the judges hate Zhalgas Zhumagulov, so I don't think either guy's going to score great, but if I'm going to take a chance on one of them, it's going to be newcomer Felipe Bunes at 7,700. I just don't think Zhalgas pays off his salary, at all. Maybe, a couple times out of 10, but I don't think I think he's just looking for a win. And if this gets into the second round and he maybe has 1 and 2 in the bag, or if it gets into the third round and he has 1 and 2 in the bag, why would he look for a finish? This dude just wants a win. So actually, at the same time, he probably doesn't want to go to the judges either. So maybe that would help. But either way, I don't think he scores well.
Hasn't helped him before. I do have a play on this fight. I did bet on Bunes, and I actually think, or Boons, or whatever you want to call him, and I believe that he's actually underrated here, and I'm going to tell you why. So I went back and I watched a lot of tape on this kid. Number one, first of all, what's with he looks like one of the Freys from
Virna Jandiroba hat. Yeah, that's true.
He's like, this is not the hat of a warrior. I don't know what that's about. It looks like one of the Freys from Game of Thrones, and their goofy hats. Not a cool look. House Frey. But I went back and watched this. First of all, he's taken losses to Jussier Formiga, and he did look good for a bit. Okay, that's a real opponent. Jussier was good in the UFC, right? This trio of losses here against extreme sort of Russian sambo grappler types. And could Zalgas kind of be one of these? I guess. But I think he actually looked like a good grappler to me. From what I've seen, he's got nice scrambles. I think he'll be the superior submission grappler in this fight. And I think his striking might be a little bit better. So the area where I might favor Zalgas just a smidge is in the offensive wrestling, but just a smidge. But from what I saw of Boone, I think he's less. I think the record looks a little worse than what it should. Again, these are not like regional scene scrubs. These are pretty good regional scene opponents that he's taken L's to, most of which should easily beat Zalgas Zhumagulov. Therefore, I took my shot at plus 135, I believe I got on Boons. And I think he's very playable, though the decision, I think there's just going to be a lot of more grappling than we think. Like I saw Boons just jumping on a back on a standing opponent. Like he is a little sneaky like that. Like remember I was talking about Ursig will do that stuff too. Boone is like that. He'll jump on your back. He's sneaky, and I like those kind of fighters. In the UFC, I just like it. All right, we're keeping it moving along, guys. This is a big card. Next up, we've got Carlos Hernandez taking on Denis Bondar, and I believe there is a pricing mistake that DraftKings put in, possibly on this fight, if I'm remembering it correctly. I got to go look. But Denis Bondar, minus 129 as the favorite. Hernandez, plus 110 as the underdog. And the fight goes the distance, minus 165. So they are leaning towards a decision. And let me double check the salary here. But I believe, yes, I was correct, that DraftKings has accidentally priced Denis Bondar as the underdog in this fight when he is favored. So Bondar is coming in at 7,900, Hernandez 8,300. So this is already a pricing issue, Big Marley. We got a pricing error. Now it's not the most egregious one I've ever seen. It's not the free square that we've seen in the past, but there is I am getting a favorite for dog money. What do you think?
Yeah, I like it. It's going to be Bondar or pass for me. I'm not trying to pay $8,300 for an underdog who I don't really think has a whole lot of upside. I mean, I didn't think Malcolm Gordon was going to finish Bondar that fast either. And that was the first fight of the night. And I remember I had like 90% Bondar. And I was like, well, that was fun. And I had no Gordon. So I turned the card off. I just didn't care anymore.
Now, let's just go back to that fight for a second, because that is the key fight to everything. Bondar is a minus 400 favorite going into that fight. A takedown monster. DraftKings gold in our minds. We're all excited to play.
Is that the running around fight where he slipped? Am I misremembering?
No, the hand broke. The arm broke during the fight.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So the question I have is, how much do we have to take away from Bondar because he got injured and lost that fight? Like, what, Marley, what should I take away from it?
Well, I mean, I honestly think we're getting more of a break in the line than we should because of it. Because I without seeing that fight, I would have favored Bondar, closer to minus 200 here probably. But I think you take away from it that he got caught in an arm bar by a guy who's not very good, and then he's fragile because his arm broke after trying to post up with it. But I don't know. I'm not taking a whole lot away from it personally. It was so fast. I don't know. I'm not too worried about it, to be honest with you. But
right.
pre that fight, I thought Bondar looked pretty good in the film that I saw. I think his striking is okay. It's a little bit wild, more so than technical. I think Hernandez, the more technical striker here, he's probably the higher volume striker, but he doesn't have a whole lot of power, and he gets taken down all the time. So I think Bondar can have, I think the biggest advantage in this fight is Bondar's ground game with wrestling and grappling. And if he can get the fight to the ground, we just saw Hernandez get finished real quick in his last fight by a good grappler. I'm picking Bondar by submission in this one, but at 7,900, he doesn't even have to get the finish. I think he could score, 90 plus points in a decision win here if he is looking to grapple, which he should. So give me Bondar to get the win. If this is a 15-minute striking match, I think it would probably go to Hernandez, but that's not how I see it going down.
The odds, first, I didn't even realize Bondar is from Ukraine. Extra reason to win right now. The Ukrainians got a lot of pressure on them. Monk, inside the distance scoring, I would imagine is very heavily in Bondar's favor here.
Well, yes, in the fact that he does have a lot of offense. Like in that one fight against, did you say Malcolm Gordon? I don't want to, Malcolm Gordon. There was a ton of things that happen in a very short amount of time. And when that happens, all stats are thrown completely off. For instance, Bondar has one of the best DraftKings points per minute, the overall work rate on the card at 5.63 per minute, but he allowed almost 9 per minute. It's the same inside the distance where he scored 7 a minute, but he allowed 12 in that 90 seconds. How long was it? 97 seconds. So it really throws the stats off. My issue is here, I don't think either one of these guys is very good, honestly. Plus Bondar has the worst strength of schedule out of any one of the 28 fighters on this card. And this is actually a very good strength of schedule card, to be completely honest. A lot of fighters in the high 70s, which is what you want to see. Right around 70 is average. The way I do it, I can figure last 5 strength of schedule, just like the BCS did for NCAA football. Exact same formula, all that stuff. And with that formula, Bondar is at a 59.95, a very, very bad number. Meanwhile, his opponent, Hernandez, is just about at 70. So the Victor Altamirano fight, not too bad. That's aged all right. He did just lose to Tim Elliott, but the Alan Nascimento, that's the one where, he's fighting an extreme, a much better grappler than he is, a much bigger fighter, I think, overall than he is as well. So I don't know, man. I'm going to fade this fight. I guess I'm going to side with the underdog here, but I'm not confident in either side. I think if Hernandez wins, he probably doesn't score well. If Bondar wins, we're hoping for an early finish, which could pay off the $7,900 salary. Last thing I'll say, when it's two guys that I don't think are very good, it would probably not be the best idea to just fade it into oblivion, as either guy could get finished early. And then, we have an Ayman Zahabi type situation where all of a sudden the guy that I didn't play at all is on the nuts lineup. So give me Hernandez to win, but I'll have more Bondar than Hernandez.
All right. So for me, I do have a bet on Dennis Bondar on this fight. I love him here. Couple reasons, but if you just follow Hernandez, there's nothing special that I've seen about Hernandez. More importantly, the takedown defense is poor, and Bondar wants to go for takedowns. Bondar could get 5 or 6 or 7 takedowns in a fight like this. Hernandez is going to want to keep it standing. I don't think he'll be able to do so. Am I worried about, Bondar's just limbs falling apart or him not having? Sure. I mean, that was pretty weird, right? Remember we used to be scared of Sean O'Malley's leg until we stopped being worried about it too. And I'm worried about it, but plus 130 for a guy who I think is demonstrably better, and is a tailor-made to beat this guy.
This line flipped instantly. You were talking about DraftKings mispricing it. This line flipped almost immediately. So as soon as they posted salaries, it just completely flipped.
It was like hanging around at plus 120, and as soon as the betting started, boom. So there was this fake initial minus 200 thing, but that's fake. We got to ignore that. This is messing up the starting odds calculations.
It does actually, because the numbers on best fight odds are way different for opening lines than what you're showing me.
Yeah, the opening was weird, specifically on Bet Online. It fucked up all the opening odds things. So you gotta ignore it. It was just a print. All of them have it. All the fights have a weird print like that from Bet Online. And the Bet Online guys are like, "Yeah, we opened it there," but I don't believe them, and I don't believe that anybody bet it. So, with that being said, Yeah, I like it. I like Dennis Bondar. I bet Dennis Bondar to win this fight. I like it when a grappler is taking on a guy with poor takedown defense. It's a good combo for me. And I love the fact that he was minus 400 just like a fight ago. So he was clearly very well regarded before he took the beating from Malcolm Gordon. The loss to Malcolm Gordon, being the unfortunate thing that actually did happen. That's 2 official plays so far, boys. Both underdogs.
I love it. Love them.
Kind of. DraftKings underdog. And I like him on DraftKings because I'm getting negative odds on somebody sub 5,100. All right. So next up, we've got Kyung-Ho Kang taking on Christian Teco Quinones. And I call him Teco because that is the brother of Teco Quinones, I believe. Big Marley, is that right?
Yeah.
That is the brother of him. Okay. That's Teco Quinones' brother. He's taking on
this is
Kang.
Problema, yeah.
Yeah. He's taking on Kyung-Ho Kang. This is a close fight with Quinones at a minus 160 and Kang at plus 140. Very close. The fight goes the distance, an unfortunate minus 160. So not looking too sexy on paper. And Big Marley, how do you see this one playing out? Quinones versus Kang.
It's a tough one. I think both sides are in play here. I like Quinones striking quite a bit. I think he's got a big edge on the feet here, but he should only be looking to strike. And I don't think he's going to have high enough volume to pay off his price tag in a decision. So he's probably knockout or bust, but maybe he could have enough volume where it doesn't have to be first round. It could be, any round, but he probably needs the bonus points for that knockout here. And then the worry would be him off his back. I think if Kang goes in there looking to wrestle and grapple, he's live to get a submission, and he's also live to win 2 or 3 rounds with wrestling. So if Kang wins, I feel good about him scoring well. I think he scores over 10x, and he has 100-point potential here. However, I'm picking Quinones. I think that Kang, he's not really a chain wrestler, so if the takedowns are not going his way, I think he'll accept a striking match. And that's where I like Quinones to get the win. Whether it be a knockout or a decision, I think that Quinones gets his hand raised here. I'll pick him to win 2 rounds, but I'll probably have 20, 25% or so just because I think he is in play for that knockout. It could come in the first round, and he could break the slate. He had 97 in his last fight, and he didn't even get the knockdown points. So I think he has a higher, 110, 120-point ceiling if he is able to get off a knockdown before the knockout in this one, and I think he's in play for it. So I'll probably be, 25%, 20% on both of these guys, but I like Quinones get the win.
Nice Quinones. All right. Monk, this one's a tough one for me. So how do you see it going down? Kang Quinones.
I mean, Kang, nickname Mr. Perfect. What else do you need? Just book it right now. Give me Kyung-Ho Kang. But no, at the salaries for real, I do like Kang at 7,400. Just with Marley, let's see. In 2 of his last 4 wins, Kang has put up over 100 points. He put up 118 against Ishihara. He put up 100 against Davis. Against Pingyang Liu, he did score 92 and then 70 against Anand Bakari. So he has been steadily declining. I think 70 is pretty much his floor, though, in a win. That's a very low score. He was 7,900 that week. Quinones did get a first-round finish in 3 minutes. He beat TKO'd Kali Taha at 7,900. He only scored 97 points. Now, usually, at 7,900, that's good. It turns out he did make the optimal lineup. Now he's $900 more than that, and that's not going to get it done, especially with 28 fighters on the card, 14 winners on the card with no draws, whatever. But I like Kang. I love the salary that we get him at. He has a very good average points per win at 95. He's the one that has a nice power index, meaning he's the one that's got the knockdown rate. He's also been chinned before in his last 5. I believe that was, who was that? Oh, it was against Ishihara, but as we know, he came back and subbed him later on in the first round. So I like the upside of Kang. This is very simply a salary play slash relative newcomer fighting an established UFC veteran type play. So I'm going to go with Mr. Perfect here. Absolutely love the nickname. Speaking of, tune in to the Unnamed Nickname Show tomorrow night at 10 o'clock, where we will be discussing Mr. Perfect against Problema. But I love Kang here. I'm going to be fading Quinones a little bit. I think he has a hard time paying off that salary.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Kang on DraftKings it's kind of Kang or bust. I don't see Quinones knocking Kang out early, and the odds makers don't see it, and I don't really see how he scores well if he's not doing that. So, Kang on the other hand, 2 takedowns per 15. Can I trust Christian Quinones is 100% takedown defense when it's been established against Taha, who doesn't go for takedowns, and some random contender series guy? No, I don't. I don't assume that this 100% is like, oh, he's that great. He could really stop a takedown. I know his brother Takeo couldn't stop a takedown. Is that analysis, Big Marley? Can you count that? Like, hey, his brother couldn't stop a takedown, so
it runs in the family.
not a thing.
I don't know. I think we tried to count it against Urbina in his last fight, and that didn't work out for us.
No, but we loaded up on Urbina.
Although I picked it, I picked Urbina, but that was a worry that his brother sucked. So
that dude is way better than his brothers.
Well, I mean, hey, the Kosuke brothers. I mean, come on now.
Yeah. I guess it sometimes works and sometimes it doesn't. I don't know what more to say here. I think it's Kang or bust on DraftKings. I am not betting Kang as a bet. So let's move on to the next fight on this card. And that's Jimmy Flick taking on Alessandro Costa. Costa, a minus 245 favorite with the comeback on Flick at plus 210. Fight ends inside the distance, a solid minus 260. And, last we saw Jimmy Flick, Jay Flizzles, he was not looking that great in that comeback fight. He had been retired. He comes back, kind of looks a little soft and not that good against Charles, gets murked by Charles Johnson. That was not that long ago, and this kid was out. He was sleeping. To bring a stretcher and carry him away. The next fighters were coming out. He's still laying there like, dude, are you leaving or are you sticking around here and you're just going to sleep here? So, Big Marley, it was January when he took the L to Charles Johnson, a nasty, nasty finish. Charles Johnson, I'm not sure if he's better than Alessandro Costa. How do you see this one going down?
Yeah, I think Flick is submission or bust in every UFC fight. He's not a good striker. He doesn't have a good chin. He's not a good wrestler. So he just needs to grab a leg and get a submission or, grab a hold of someone, drag it to the floor. But Costa's the better wrestler in this one. He's a decent grappler as well. So I don't know that. I would imagine Flick's the better grappler of the two. If they're just rolling around, I would imagine he's the first one to catch a submission here. But Costa's live to land multiple takedowns here if he wants them because Flick will accept it. But the poor chin of Flick is really what we're targeting against here. Costa throws everything with power. He's going to be trying to knock Flick's head off when he's not trying to kick his leg off. And I think eventually he's going to land it. So I like Costa. But at the same time, if Flick wins, he has slate breaking potential, 90 plus points. Might not even get the takedown. Just like the Durden fight, he scored 93. He got the win in the first round, but he didn't get the takedown. That could be what it takes here, but I don't even see 100 plus point upside. I don't think he does enough leading up to that submission. So we probably need a first or a second round submission from him, but I'll get some exposure there. I think he has a higher ceiling than a lot of these underdogs, even some that I'm picking to win. So this is a fight I want in more than half my lineups, but I'll be on the Costa side.
Yeah, Monk. Flick, his style of fighting does produce when it wins. His fantasy points in a win number will look really good, but when he's losing, he kind of quits. From what I've seen, he knows he ain't got it, and then there's nothing he can do.
That is certainly what it looked like in the Charles Johnson fight here. I'm a stats guy, and Alessandro Costa got absolutely manhandled by Amir Albazi in his one and only UFC fight. That tells me absolutely nothing, to be quite honest. Like, he scored 11 points in 3 minutes. What he landed? 17 strikes. He got knocked down twice and taken down, and absolutely dominated. So, yeah, I don't like paying up to 9,400 for a guy that has one UFC win, and it took 2 minutes for him to get absolutely annihilated. So I will be on the side of, I'll have a little bit of Costa, but, man, it's going to be really difficult, to be honest. I'll have much more exposure to some cheaper fighters in the 9K range, I think, than I will Costa. But Jimmy Flick is absolutely submission or bust. And when he busts big, allowing a ton of points to his opponents. I mean, like you said, Charles Johnson shouldn't be scoring, like how many points did he score? 113. He shouldn't be scoring 113 on anybody.
Flick looked like he was just not
like you said, it looked like he was going to quit. It looked like he was out of there, and that's all he has. He's a specialist, much like, my guy, Paul Craig. That dude is extremely, frustrating to watch occasionally when his game plan is not working. It is like, what are you doing?
I feel I got to give Paul Craig a little bit of credit here.
I love Paul Craig.
And his striking improved over the years. Like, he got a little better at the striking over the years.
But that Ozdemir fight, that was tough. As a Paul Craig fan, that was tough to watch, man. That was just, that was no Ryan Hall type of performance, but man, that was frustrating to watch. Yeah. And I feel like Jimmy, Pusha T's favorite fighter, Jimmy the Brick Flick, does have that in him. So I'm going to have Flick rostered because I think Marley's right. Again, if he wins, slate breaking potential, 6,800. What does he have to? He probably just needs a win to make the optimal lineup, even with all these fighters. So I'm going to be looking to fade Costa. I think a lot of people, actually, I don't know what his ownership's going to be coming off of an ass whooping like that. So I'll be fading Costa a little bit and give me some Flick. But as you said, Costa, you got to have him rostered because what if Flick quits again in the first, man? That's going to be an easy, 105, 110. Flick
had quit UFC. He had retired.
Yeah.
Then he abruptly came back and he just didn't look good in the first fight back. And then the question is, did he come back too soon? Now did he train another 6 months? Is he going to look better? Because I thought Jimmy Flick, he's got that style. Like I said, you mentioned that other dude, Ryan Hall, and yeah, that guy wins in the UFC. Like, that style can win. It can win. It's not my favorite thing to watch, but it can win in the UFC. So yeah, I think the issue for me with Costa is the salary. Again, a little too close to the Tsarukyan level. I'm trying to find the extra couple hundy. Get Tsarukyan in there.
Exactly.
I'll make it work. A little too close to the you don't want to it's like flying too close to the sun. It's a little too close. All right. Guys, remember to like and subscribe to the channel if you like the breakdowns, UFC. I'll be back separately. Last week I didn't do one because I could not find any spots that I like, guys. But I try to do a Prize Picks MMA breakdown video. I've already got 3 or 4 legs picked out for this week. So if you're subscribed to the channel, hit that notification bell. And when we put out the MMA Prize Picks video, you'll be there for it. And you'll be one of the first ones because when that video comes out, a lot of those lines change real quick afterwards. Don't know. They're watching us. I couldn't put one out last week, and happily so. The way the fights went last week, I was like, I can't get a feel for this. And they went not the direction that I was thinking. I actually made the video. I just didn't publish it last week because 5 minutes after I made it, I go, I don't feel good about these spots. Like, one was Maria Oliveira over on Significant Strikes. And I was like, well, I just don't like her to win and the whole thing. So I'm glad I didn't do it. Although the under on Fantasy Score would have paid off on her part. But whatever. I digress. Next up, Howney Barcelos taking on Miles Johns. Barcelos a -211 favorite. Comeback on Miles Johns plus 181. The fight goes the distance is another -140. So more likely to go the distance than not, Big Marley. You got a veteran here in Barcelos taking on sort of I don't know, is it an up-and-comer and Miles John? I'm not sure what we call him, but how do you see this one going down, Big Marl?
Yeah, Barcelos coming off of getting knocked out not too long ago. That's really my biggest worry with Barcelos. John's is a decent wrestler. He's got one-punch power, but I just don't see the wrestling working out in this matchup because I think Barcelos is the better wrestler. I think he's the better grappler.
I just want to mention that he was the one that I was actually thinking of that was out cold and sleeping in his previous fight. It was him. It wasn't it wasn't whoever we just talked about 5 seconds ago who name escaped. It was actually him. Now I'm remembering. I had it in my mind that it was right at this point in the card, but it was Barcelos who went to sleep.
It's probably the same night, to be honest.
Correction.
But But yeah, I just think skill wise, Barcelos is better everywhere. Much higher volume. I think he's got more one punch power. I think he's a better wrestler. I think he's a better grappler. I'm only worried about that chin. So it's really knockout or bust, in my opinion, for Johns. He's a decent wrestler, but he never wrestles a lot in the UFC. So I'd be really surprised if this was the one where he went out there and landed 8+ takedowns. Give me Barcelos. I'll fade Johns on this one. I like other underdogs more. I think he is in play for that knockout potential, but I just don't think I'm going to make enough lineups to get there. If I end up making up more than 20, then I'll have a little bit of John's exposure. But I like Barcelos. He scored well in his first 3 fights. I believe he scored over 110. And then he had a decision win where he scored in the 90s recently. I think he could do either of those here, 110 with the finish, 90 with a decision. I'm all right with that. So I'll get some Barcelos exposure, and I'm cool with him in cash games too if I end up playing that. But I'm going to fade Johns. Let's go Barcelos.
If I had to give you a reason not to fade Johns, I'm going to give you one, which is the fact that Umar Nurmagomedov had never really knocked anybody out until that fight, and he put this dude out cold, right? And it's a reminder. And Ayman Zahabi, on the same note, has pretty much never knocked anybody out either, and he was in the nuts last week.
Yeah, first time knockout, he's on the nuts for sure. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, this dude was sleeping like a couple months ago, and not. So let me reiterate my incorrect discussion of the previous fight, where I say this dude was out for a while.
Yeah, I think Flick was out cold too.
Was he? Was it both of them? It could have been both, but like this dude was out for a while, and he got knocked out by somebody who's not known as a striker at all. That's Umar. You guys, it's Umar. It's an insane grappler. He doesn't.
I also think this was also let me show you what else I can do. I think
could have been
Umar
that, right? It could have been like, let me have some fun, but you're having some fun against Ronnie Barcelos, who's a good opponent.
That was not an accident. I think Olivas, somebody broke it down this week. I already listened to a podcast, but everybody's calling it a jab. It wasn't a jab. This dude hit him with something, switched stances, and then got him to feint on some. Oh, it was just beautiful. Okay. This guy's got mad skills.
So there was some skill involved in that. So I got to find that podcast. That sounds great. With that being said, this dude was out. So I'm afraid to just full fade Miles Johns in case this guy's chin hasn't recovered. In case Barcelos' chin has not recovered. That's my concern.
Yeah, and I see that too. It's just the Miles Johns historically. I mean, truly an awful DraftKings asset to put in your lineup there. I mean, this guy's barely at 2 points a minute over his UFC career. Inside the distance, it's less than that. But the positive side is he allows less no matter where. So bottom line is there's no volume in Miles Johns fights. He's low volume himself, and he has good defense seemingly. So nobody's really scoring much in these fights. In fact, when he wins, this is over 4 wins, less than 72 points a win. His opponents score 85 when he loses. It's just very, very low numbers here. He does have a 92% takedown defense. Barcelos with 100%. Each one has had 13 takedowns attempted against them. John's the only one to give up just 1 takedown. Both guys have great strength of schedules, but Barcelos takes that as well. The biggest differential in these stats that I'm seeing is Barcelos controls 85% of all grappling time he's involved in, where John's controls just 43. So I like Barcelos. In fact, he's one of the higher end people that I can realistically see myself throwing some exposure to, some meaningful exposure. I mean, Armin's just so hard to get to. We'll get to that. I won't talk about that one at all yet, but Bladea, like you already heard me talk about, is going to be tough for me to get to. So I don't mind Barcelos here, but there is a worry that he doesn't score well. But that said, I mean, John's just time and time again, just repeatedly refuses to put up a good DraftKings score. So even at 6,900, I guess that's so cheap that you could have a little bit of him just in case what you're talking about happens. But man, even at that price, it's going to be tough for me to get to much Miles Johns, I think.
Barcelos was a DraftKings scoring beast in the early part of his career when he was taking on mediocre guys. I think he's going to have a hard time getting a takedown against Miles Johns with his 93% takedown defense, which really harms his likely scoring. I'm just, again, I have his DraftKings fantasy point totals here, and like most fights, he looks pretty good. But a lot of these guys he could wrestle against, like Khaled Taha, when he's getting the takedowns, he had some decent scores. Here's a win where he only scored 64, but you had that group of 100+ point winners really early in his career. So it's like, this is one of those guys that puts up a big number, even though when you look at his stats, they don't really bear out to the kind of fighter that scores well. Wait, I'm not showing it. They don't bear out to a fighter that scores well on DraftKings. With that being said, at 9,300, again, a little too close in the zone to to the Tsarukyan dimension over here, that I'm just trying to favor Armin if I need to go there for the most part. And there's some others up here too. So he will not be. I like Ronnie Barcelos. He's not a priority. And for me, Miles Johnson's exclusively in lineups for the maybe Ronnie's chin is no good possibility. But that's a small possibility. I'm not excited about him at all. So my pick is going to be a Barcelos here to get the win, probably by decision and probably not scoring enough to matter on DraftKings this week. But we'll see about all that. And speaking of fights, I don't want to play on DraftKings on the favored side. We got Muslim Salikhov taking on Nicholas Dalby. Oh, man. There's a lot of fights on this card, but at least some of them, we could just mostly cross the name off the favorite at least. And I think you could cross this name off your list. But Muslim Salikhov, a -190 favorite. Nicholas Dalby, +165 on the comeback. Big Marley, these guys are old, man. We've seen them a lot. Are we bringing something new to the table? What are we looking at here?
No, you're right. I mean, Salikhov's an easy fade at 9,200. He's first round knockout or bust, and he could get the first round knockout and still not make the optimal lineup. So I'm just going to X him out of my player pool. The only reason to play him is you're hoping for that first round knockout, and he's going to be low owned. You combine those two together, you can maybe get a chance at that 100K, but easy fade for me. I'm Xing him out of my player pool.
I almost don't. Wait, I gotta say this part. I almost don't want to spoil this because Monk's probably got this stat in his back pocket. But like, Muslim Salikhov has one of the lowest scoring wins in the history of DraftKings scoring, and that includes that fight where Derek Lewis landed 15 strikes and won against Usman. This dude scored 46 points in a win.
No, that's bad.
That's not good. All right, continue, Big Marl. Sorry.
But Dalby, I think this is close to a pick and fight. I do think Salikhov is the better overall striker with more power, but he's not high volume. I think Dalby in his last fight showed the most volume we've seen from him. I think that same guy can win a striking match here if it goes all 3 rounds. And if there is a ground game, I favor Dalby slightly there, I guess. I really don't like Dalby either, but he's 7K. I'm picking him to win. I think this is a split decision type fight. I'd always rather have the underdog in that scenario. So I think Dalby's in play just for that reason. He's cheap. He's live, but I don't see him having 100-point upside here either. So I would like to fade the fight as a whole, but if I do play either side, it's going to be Dalby.
Dalby's both of these guys have a long history of not putting up good points on DraftKings.
And Salikhov, knockout or bust. Dalby's never been knocked out, so another reason not to play him.
Monk, outside of the Alves fight, which was pretty impressive, 69 in a win, 54 in a win. Like, what is he, Muslim Salikhov? How is it so bad? Oliveira, 69 in a win. Here's a against Zaleski dos Santos. That's the 46er for Muslim. He got an 86. So I don't know if people can even see this on the screen. Like, I try to put these numbers up. It's hard to see it. But neither of these guys score well at all.
Well, they're no Johan Linnaeus, that's for sure. But yeah, it's pretty bad. It should be noted Linnaeus scoring less than 40 in his win against Gabe. His win against Gabe Green. So he, salute the king when you see him, Johan Linnaeus. That's what all these guys are doing. But yeah, and it is ironic that Salikhov put up Dalby, who was it? Yeah, Salikhov put up 46 against Zaleski, and Zaleski just won last week with some super shitty score too, like in the 60s or 50s or something like that. So It's almost like these guys are like DraftKings points vampires for each other. Anyways, this is 9,200 for Salikhov. What are we? This is almost as crazy to me as 9,500 for Teresa Bladea. Like, this girl just got her head kicked off, and now she's like the second highest owned or salaried fighter on the card. Like, same with Salikhov here. This dude averages 70 points over his last 4 wins. Dalby is not much better, 72. I hate this fight for DraftKings. The only reason I will be playing Dalby is because he's so extremely cheap, and he actually did score well, like you mentioned, I believe.
In his most recent fight.
Against Alves, that's correct. 94, almost 95. Can't quite round up, but, pretty damn close. So Dalby's got, I guess, upside just because of his salary. But again, these guys score in the low 70s on average. So I don't know what it would take for Salikhov to actually pay off his salary. I really don't see that happening. I'll have a little bit of Dalby, but I'm right in line with Marley here. This fight. I wouldn't be mad at you if somebody wanted to call this fight unplayable. I would have no problem with that. I'm not going to do that personally. I'll be pretty close.
So many fights on this card. Again, for me, the pick is Dalby. Not because I necessarily think he's going to win, but like you, Marley, and like you, Monk, if I'm playing somebody on DraftKings, I'm playing the cheaper guy. Sometimes at 7K, all you need is a win. And if I was betting this, I would also bet Dalby because I'm taking plus money in what appears to be a 50-50 fight. Neither guy throws enough volume. I think it's going to be a striking battle. And the only thing that Muslim has that's different from Dalby is a little push up against the fence action, which does that score? No,
I mean, it gets you control time, but like
it doesn't score. It's
if you're not throwing punches.
10 minutes of that control time in his last fight. And
Exactly. If you're not throwing rabbit punches, at least landing if you're just not doing anything, then no.
I'm not into it. I don't like it. And then it gets worse. So it just gets worse. Like he's pushing him again, and then you have to deal with judges. Like anything can go any way. This kind of fight, it's like who's there? Chris Lee, Sal D'Amato. Who's there? That goes one way or the other. You have no control over this one. You cannot bet the favorite here.
But if you have to deal with the judges, rest assured, Salikhov is not on the optimal lineup.
You are dealing with, well, there you go. So no volume, nothing good here. Let's move on. All right. So this is Nicholas Mota taking on Manuel Torres. Torres coming in as a minus 180 favorite with Mota coming back at plus 155. The fight ends inside the distance, a shockingly high. This is just like, what? I didn't even look at this until just now. Minus 350. What? Where? Here's minus 425 on this cockamamie book, but minus 350 on the real one on Bet Online. So, Big Marley, Nicholas Mota, Manuel Torres. How do you see it going down? Tell me about these guys.
See, I think it's a good DraftKings fight to target, mainly because that inside the distance line. All but one of Torres's fights have ended in the first round, so that's why it's such a good fight to target. Mota has big power, but that's really all he's got. He's got good striking, but he's not going to be out there landing takedowns. He's not going to blow you away with volume, so he needs a knockout to have any chance at even 90 plus potential, in my opinion. But he is in play for that knockout. I just think Torres is the better striker. I think he's going to be the longer, taller guy here, and he fights well at range. He's got good front kicks, good jabs, and I think he's the more technical striker of the two. If it goes to a decision, I think he's the one that's going to win. He probably doesn't score enough for the optimal if it goes the distance, but I'm picking him to get a TKO. He's dangerous. He's aggressive. And he goes for the finish. So I like Torres here. He's not too expensive either. It's a lot easier to put him in our lineups than it is those high 9K people. So I'll probably end up overweight to Torres. And then Mota will be more of a hedge play for me because I'm going to be overweight to Torres. I don't want to be burned by a first round Mota knockout. But if Mota doesn't get a first round knockout, he probably needs it in the second round because a third round knockout probably not going to be enough, especially if he's losing the first 2 rounds. So it's going to be more so Torres or pass. If I was making 3 lineups, it's only Torres or pass for me.
Are you expecting much grappling here?
No, not much. I think it would be from Torres if we did, but I don't expect either one of them to be looking for takedowns.
I like it. Monk, Torres is coming off a win against, I believe it was Frank. Frank Camacho.
Looked
Camacho's
great.
Frankie's washed up.
True, but still. I mean, he was only a minus 125 dog or favorite. A lot of people made some money that night, I think, on that line. And he paid off DraftKings salary as well. So he did make the optimal lineup there, scoring 114 against Frank the Tank. I like this fight. I think Torres, man, I don't know. I was going to say a bit too expensive, but obviously not based on the only one historical, fight that we have for him. Only 3.5 minutes in the cage. That's all it took for him to dispose of Camacho. I actually like Mota here at 7,300. I think he's got a huge KO upside, to be quite honest here. That's where I'm going to have most of my, exposure for the most part on this one. I do like Torres. I think he could be more expensive in this case, but I also kind of think this line is a bit too wide. Mota, I believe he took that Miller fight on super short notice, if I'm not mistaken, like a week's notice. Correct me if I'm wrong. And he actually made it way further than Jim Miller's opponent from last weekend. That's for sure. He actually got into halfway through the fight.
How much should we
hold? Round.
How much should we hold that loss against someone like Miller's? Miller's going to beat these kind of guys.
Dude, Miller cracks still to this. I mean, I don't have to tell you. Everybody saw it last week. The dude was fighting a guy named Jesse Butler, but I mean that the guy still cracks. If you think he's old or washed, that is, obviously not true.
He beats these kind of guys. Like, he's still a cachet name.
Yep.
He's Donald Cerrone before Cerrone just crumbled.
Completely gave it. Yeah, exactly. So
he's going to beat those kind of guys.
Yeah,
I'm just looking at the inside the distance prop for both guys. Dude, it is high. Like, you cannot really fade this on either side. Mota plus 165 inside the distance. Torres plus 125, guys. Like, this fight, and it's surprising for me, but the under 1.5 is minus 160. The reason it's also surprising is because these are not like large fighters. They're fighting at 155.
It is crazy you're getting Mota at the same line with his inside the distance as his money line, though. I think that's a little off.
How is that even? Wait a minute. What is going on here? Right? That is bizarre, right? Wait.
Plus, what do you love to see when guys get KO'd? You love to see him come back and absolutely run through their opponent, which he did with Van Camp. So, yeah, I like Mota here, to be quite honest.
Marley, should I save the 10 cents and take Mota inside the distance, or should I just roll? What? How is it? Like, all right, a little betting advice out there. If you did want to play Mota, do not take the inside the distance prop. Okay, pay the extra 10 cents. Let's just get him to win, because he can win by decision. I think this fight is close. I think it's probably closer. I mean, Mota knocked out Van Camp. That dude's pretty good. He got a real win. He's got a real UFC win. I don't know who's better between these two. I get it, but
Van Camp's not good. We don't need to.
Yeah, that might have been a bridge too far, but I was going to let it slide.
Come on, didn't he have a respectable performance?
Oh, didn't Fiallo rip his head off and then Mota KO'd him real quick?
Yeah, no, there was no respect. Okay,
no respect.
So, I do remember the fight versus Fiallo. So I don't know. Still, give me. I like both sides of this. You cannot ignore that crazy inside the distance prop.
Nope.
Big Marley. I'll take some Torres, but I'm also gonna play some Mota here. I don't know if I'm going to favor one that intensely over the other one.
Not an all-in fight, but one I want to be heavy on.
Definitely going to be heavy. And we need these underdogs on this card, but we also need favorites that aren't over 9K on this card, because everybody's over 9K. So it is nice to see one that's not quite that expensive. That's all I have to say about this fight. No bet. Here's another one. Very expensive fighter, but the odds are not that, the odds are shockingly close on this one, if you ask me. But look, Almeida didn't legitimately open at minus 300, but kind of. It was minus 200, and it's just tightening. It's just tightening against Lucas Almeida. At this point, he's minus 200. Taking on Lucas Almeida, who's at this point plus 145. Again, did it start at plus 275? I don't really know, but
there'll be people out there tracking it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I've seen. When you look at these, Like if you look at other books, it doesn't have that ticket. It's just Bet Online. So that's what I'm saying. There's a little bit of weirdness to it.
Yeah.
But Almeida's the underdog here. Sabatini, crazy grappler. I don't even think this guy cares about striking from what I've seen. He's just a grappler and he's good at it. I like that. I'm down with it. But Big Marley, how do you see this fight going down? Because Sabatini's style is DraftKings gold if he can execute it.
Yeah, I think it's a striker versus grappler matchup. I think they're both fairly well-rounded. Like Sabatini's not a terrible striker and Almeida's not a fish out of water on the ground, but I think it's going to be a clear favor to Sabatini on the mat and clear favor to Almeida on the feet. I think Almeida's very in play for a knockout in any round here. If he can stuff takedowns, I think he's going to piece Sabatini apart. Just have a lot higher volume, be a lot more dangerous landing the harder shots on the feet. But if Sabatini is landing takedowns, I think he's going to keep Almeida on the ground or get a submission. So another fight I want to target pretty heavily. I'm going to pick Sabatini because I just lean with grapplers over strikers and those types of matchups. But I think that the line should be a lot closer to pick them. So if I had to pick one of them and put it in my lineup or just bet the money line, I would rather take Almeida. I think he's very live here. Could get 110 points with the first round knockout. We just saw Sabatini get dropped and finished by someone much less dangerous, in my opinion, in the striking with Damon Jackson. So I like both sides of this fight. I'm going to pick Sabatini to win, but maybe I'll even go the other way with my kill shot. We'll have to see.
Interesting. I'm a little surprised that you see this one as close to that 50-50 fight. I'm surprised. It's making me I'm going to have to relook at this fight because my first thought was
I would say 50-50. I would say just closer to like in between 50-50 and where Sabatini's at. I just think it's too wide, but I would favor him. If there was no line, I'd probably put him, minus 140, something like that.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, my thing is Almeida just has not been good at stopping he does not appear to be particularly good at stopping takedowns. And I think that's what you need to do against Sabatini, or you got to knock him out real quick on the entry because this guy just goes for the takedown right away. Like he doesn't waste time from what I've seen. Like he's just in there and he's like, all right, let's put you on your back. Like that is what he's in there to do. I like guys like that, but Monk, I'm sure the numbers really favor Sabatini. Like this dude is a DraftKings machine when he's on.
That's kind of what I was thinking too, but I mean, and I can't debate that. It's just the numbers aren't as wide as I thought they were. I mean, obviously I know he's no Merab Dvalishvili, but I thought they would be wider than they are. I mean, overall, it's still very good. Let me reiterate, 4.27 points a minute to less than 2 inside the distance. I mean, everywhere he's outscoring his opponents, but over his last, how many wins does he have in the UFC? 4?
Yeah.
Let's see, 96 is his average. So not even quite 100 points. That does worry me for somebody.
Let's give the circumstance though. The Emmers fight, he just submitted him like real quick.
And that's not going to score you any points. Exactly.
No, but he got the 90, and I'm not going to fault a guy for going in and just getting a sub real quick. And against somebody who's good in Emmers. The fight that concerns me is the Connolly fight for 2 reasons. 1, because Connolly not that good, but 2, why is there only one takedown? So he only one takedown. He didn't bother going for the takedowns against Connolly, and it led to a pretty shitty score in 83. That's the one I'm concerned about.
83 with a knockdown.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does just a bad score. One thing I do like that I see in his stats though are the love taps. There's a lot of love taps happening when he's got you taken down.
Because he is extremely active on the ground, and that's where he's going to hopefully pay off that salary. So I do like this side. I mean, he has made the optimal lineup once out of the past 5, so not the best rate, but he's still that's better than a lot of guys. Almeida is just too cheap not to play. I mean, we've seen Sabatini get cracked. He got super cracked against Damon Jackson, as I believe Marley brought up in his last fight, which was extremely surprising to me personally. That was, I believe, when someone in his family had just passed, and he had like the Super Saiyan strength and just came out and just did not stop against Sabatini, got him out of there. So kudos to Jackson there. But that does leave me to question Sabatini's chin, because he's got a little bit cracked before as well. He hasn't necessarily gone down, but that chin is definitely being tested. I think Almeida can test it, and at 7,100, I'm willing to put a little bit of a stake in that. So I like this fight overall for DraftKings. I wish Sabatini scored a little bit better than he does, especially at the salary of 9,100. That's kind of a lot for him. But I think the winner has a good chance of scoring well. So I do really like this fight for DraftKings overall. And yeah, like I said, like Marley said, I think minus 140. I think this fight's a lot closer. I will be very close to 50-50 as well on my exposure. I think that's a perfectly acceptable plan of attack here.
Yeah, I'm about it. And I do see, Lucas's previous win came against Mike Triziano, and Triziano's not bad. So, more power to him. For me, I'm definitely leaning with Sabatini here. I think he's one of the good plays on this card, primarily because, he's that takedown lunatic that we have a lot of on this card, but he's at least not priced that high, so you can afford it. And he's taking on a guy that can't stop a takedown. I'm all about it. Now, guys, remember, before we move on to the last, remember, at the very end of this breakdown, we're going to give you our kill shots, our favorite underdogs on the card. I'm personally riding a pretty nice little kill streak over the little while. Jasmine last week, kill shot, another killer. So we want to keep that going. I got some good feelings for this week's kill shot as well. So hit the like button, subscribe, and all that. And also bear with the fact that this is a 14 fight card. So if you're watching this in 1.0 speed, if you're not watching this live, I forgot to say it early, but 1.25 or 1.5x speed on YouTube is your friend. Always watch these videos at 1.5x, save half your time. I just saved people, Monk, hours of their life.
You did. That's a fantastic tip.
I am to the point where I can listen to voices so quickly. I've got my brain used to 2x. And now I can read a book on Audible in twice the time that somebody else, 17-hour book, no problem, bitch. I got it in 9 hours.
Hell yeah. It's when they put the music in that I remember how fast I'm listening.
Yeah.
Sounds like a carnival.
Yeah. You get a little song going a little quicker. Well, that's what happens on my YouTube. I'm watching everything in 1.75, 2x. And then all of a sudden, I'll put a song on, like a rap, and it'll be like, whoa, that song is going crazy fast. Hold on.
Yeah. Or you accidentally listen to the podcast at regular speed. You're like, this is slow and weird.
Oh, I can't listen to anything at regular speed. There are a couple of people out there that speak at a rapid pace where 2x is just too fast for them. But that ain't me, and that ain't you, and that ain't you, Big Marley.
Nope.
We all speak at a very comfortable pace where 2x is totally fine. And if you're not quite used to it, you 1.5x that shit. You won't even notice. It's different. All right. We're coming to the end. Final three on the card. We got Armen Petrosyan taking on Christian Duncan. Duncan a favorite here, minus 145. Come back on Petrosyan, plus 125. And the fight goes the distance, plus 100 inside distance, minus 130. Big Marley, Duncan, Petrosyan, close fight. How do you see it going down?
Yeah, both guys strikers. I think that Duncan has the power edge. I think he's also more likely to look for takedowns if either one of them do, but this should be a striking match. And I think that Petrosyan's the more technical striker. I think he's also the higher pace striker. Really good kicks. He could get a knockout himself. But I just don't see either side scoring well if this goes the distance. So we're really playing for the knockout on the Duncan side. And then Petrosyan, he's probably looking at like 85 as his ceiling if he doesn't get a knockout, which I don't know if that'll cut it. But I think he was around plus 150, Petrosyan, when I broke this fight down, and I was really eyeing a bet on him then. I think it should be closer to 50-50. I'm not even opposed to giving him a slight favorite status in this one. So I'm going to take the underdog and say Petrosyan wins 2 rounds with striking, but he probably only scores around 10x, maybe not even 10x if that's the case. So I'll be looking to target other fights more so. But Duncan's in play for his knockout potential. I won't get much of that, but Petrosyan's somebody I might be around field weight on. And if I had to put him in a cash game lineup, I'm not completely against that.
A couple things about this fight. One, Armen Petrosyan looks very similar to the dude that comes to my house whenever I lose a bunch of bets with my bookie and it's collection day.
With a bat over his shoulder. Hey man, you got
Yeah,
that
he
money?
looks just like this guy. Like I get the willies, even just breaking this down. I'm like almost afraid to talk bad about him. You know what I mean? Like, no, I love you. You know, like it's all good. He's a really good fighter.
What's that
But-
Chevy Chase line from Dirty Work? He's like, when a bookie breaks your thumb or breaks your leg, it turns out you still have to pay him. That doesn't even make sense.
You don't get out of it. You still have to pay. I'm like, he's like, you got the money? I'm like, yeah, I got the money. Sorry, I was just busy. It's all good. Here's an extra hundo. Sorry to make you drive all the way out here. It won't happen again. Right. But I mean, talk about guys whose record doesn't like imply, not Tsarukyan, Petrosyan, does not imply like somebody I need to play on DraftKings. He just doesn't do anything that scores. Even when he lands 118 significant strikes, which is a massive amount of volume, you know, it's a 77, it's an 81. And I don't know the scenario where Armen Petrosyan scores more than 80. He needs knockdowns. He needs a finish. We haven't seen that so far. Now, again, contrast that to the fellow that comes to my house. If there was any sort of a fight, the knockdown and submission would happen almost instantaneously. Be really different in terms of the DraftKings scoring for that one. So I don't really, you know, but he's cheaper, so that's good. I mean, that's all I got on it. I don't know what more to say. Monk, you cannot be excited about these guys.
No, not at all. You said it. Armen Petrosyan, 118 strikes. He scored 77. He actually landed more than that against RoboCop, 127, and he only scored 81 points. Gets taken down in every single fight, numerous times. In fact, 9 times to be exact over his first 3 UFC fights. Now he's fighting an undefeated Christian Leroy Duncan, who scored decently against Dusko Todorovic, 95. Not great. I mean, he was 8,700. He did make the optimal lineup, though, turns out. So it was just good enough to do exactly what we want him to do. And that was an inside of 2 minutes finish there on Dusko. I'm going to lean with Duncan here. Petrosyan, I mean, you nailed it. He just does not do much at all to score. I think he somehow made the optimal lineup against RoboCop with that 81-point victory. The score must have been ridiculously low that week.
I was so shocked. I was all over.
He was like 7,700. He barely 10x'd, and he made the optimal lineup. So, I mean, good for him. But, yeah, that's an extremely low score. I like the upside of Duncan here. I'll have much more of him rostered most likely. I think he probably wins this fight. But even like you guys were saying, even in a win, Petrosyan doesn't score for shit. So I'll have a little bit of him just because he's so cheap. But, man, I'm just not expecting much here. I'm not even really expecting a win, to be honest.
You got to give Petrosyan a lot of credit, though, for landing all that volume while being taken down multiple times in those fights. So the long pauses. Big Marley, is Christian Duncan going to go for takedowns here? Because Armen cannot stop it. He seems to get right back up, but he doesn't really do the best of stopping the initial takedown.
Yeah, I would guess it's not in his game plan. But maybe if the striking's not going his way, that's game plan B. Who knows?
Yeah, we haven't seen him do it, but I mean, against Dusko, like you could just win however you want.
And we have seen Petrosyan knocked out cold on the regional scene, but he's faced RoboCop and AJ Dobson, both guys huge power. I think more power than Duncan. So I'm not super worried about that knockout, which is why I won't get too much Duncan exposure here. I would just rather target the 9K guys I've already mentioned, and then the guy we got coming up as well.
No, I feel it. I mean, I've been against Petrosyan almost every fight, so it has not gone my way at all. I don't really know how to be right about a guy I'm always wrong on, so I'm just gonna like I said, I told you he gives me the willies because he reminds me bad experiences. So I'm just
I think I picked against him all 3 times.
I almost have to recuse myself from being able to break down that fight. I have to staying out of it. I'm out. All right, here we go. The aforementioned Armen Tsarukyan finally minus 1,000. There's nothing to break down here, but we'll break it down real quick. Armen Tsarukyan minus 1,000, taking on Neto BJJ, coming in at plus 700. Let's see the inside the distance prop. Fight ends inside the distance. minus 325. I mean, for fuck's sake. I don't know what to say here, Big Marley. Tsarukyan averaging something like 35 takedowns per 7 minutes. I mean, this guy's a beast. Neto. Well, let's pull the stats up here. Hold on. Let's pull the stats up. The real. Here we go. Tsarukyan averaging 3.5 takedowns per 15, but his scores, 117, 110, 126. There's a couple of weak wins in the 80s. And then, of course, the most recent win, 99 against Damir Ismagulov, 7 takedowns in that fight. Marley, is he worth the 9,800?
See, I would say in cash you have to play him because he's our only safe win on the card. But I don't know that you have to play him at GPP. He's at a price tag that we've never seen before when there's a lot of other fighters who have high ceilings on this card. So I think it's just if I can afford him, if I'm getting a lot of lineups with underdogs, then I'll put him in there. But I have a feeling I'm not going to be able to get a whole lot of 9,800 in my GPP lineups. So I'm seeing like a third of my lineups, something like that, which would probably put me underweight. I think on Rainmakers, where there's no salary cap, you're just trying to get the 5 highest scoring fighters. I think he's worth paying up for over there.
Won't he be so highly owned as the captain that it's almost not playable either?
Possibly. I don't know. It's because he's going to be hard to. He's expensive over there.
No.
So if people buy him, he's going to be in the captain for sure. Then you're not going to buy him to put him somewhere else. But
they're buying him.
If I'm playing Rainmakers this week, you'll see Arman in my lineup in the captain spot most likely. I already got a legendary card. That's what my plan is. So we'll see. Unless someone wants to pay me $420 for it, then I'll give it up. Rainmakers this week, thanks to Arman. But I think he could go out there. He can win any way he wants. He could go out there and win a striking match. He could wrestle for 3 rounds. I think the only way Silva wins is a flash knockout or like a guillotine submission with Arman going for the takedown. But if Arman wins a striking match, he's not scoring enough to pay off 9,800. We need him to be closer to that 120 at this price tag. And I don't know if he's going to go out there and land 10 takedowns in this matchup. So I'm guessing I'll be underweight. And I'll just get my exposure over there on Rainmakers. I mean, he's not really helping out parlays either. So I'll probably act like this fight doesn't exist for a lot of my lineups and target other fights, hoping that Arman wins with 105 points and just doesn't make the 100K lineup. But easy win, in my opinion. I think he's a future champion. Tsarukyan, 30-27, if not, 30-24.
Minus 275. To win inside the distance for Tsarukyan. Monk, I mean, it's an expensive price to pay. And he definitely is. He's only hitting value half the time. If we're just throwing away the opponent, there it is. 117, great. Christos, the Holy Rolla, 10 takedowns. My goodness. But he's only getting there half the time. And then you've got 1, 2, 3 wins where you're done. You didn't get there.
Yeah. It's I couldn't believe it, honestly, when I saw it. And I don't want to hear it's because he's going to smash Silva. That's why he's 9,800. I put that question out on Twitter. It's like, of course he's going to smash Silva. He's a minus 1,000 favorite. We've seen more than a couple of those in recent memory. There've never been 98. This is the single most expensive salary that we've seen in well over 2.5 years.
I was going to say, didn't Cyborg once come in at 10K?
I mean, that was
like pre-salary change. That's when you had 5 fighters in a lineup.
Yeah, exactly. So that was much different. This is outrageous, man. Like, I just don't see it. I mean, of course, Tsarukyan is probably going to dominate here. He scores 4.2 points a minute inside the distance, while Silva gives up 6.61 points a minute inside the distance. But Tsarukyan, over his however many wins at the weight class, I believe he's 5-1, is only scoring like 96 points per win. So that is not going to do it for me. I don't know how I'm going to get to much of Tsarukyan at all. I think he's finding cash, like Marley said. He's got a great, a great floor as well. Actually, it's just kind of average for the most part. He does control most of the grappling time he's involved in. Has a fantastic strength of schedule. That's not the argument here. I think Tsarukyan wins like 9.5 times out of 10 against Silva. I mean, just a slip on a banana peel is the only way I don't see him winning this fight. But how is that supposed to justify $9,800? Like, it's hard enough for me to play $9,700, which does make optimal just 2 out of 6 times. So how much more difficult is 98 going to be? Like, I think this is crazy, man. There might be huge leverage on here if you know, I don't know what's he going to have to score to make optimal, like 120. He's going to have to put up his highest score that he's ever put up, if not more.
Well, on this card, there's a lot of fights with fight goes the distance is what Vegas thinks is going to happen. So this could be the card where he could score 110 and make it happen, even with 14 fights, which is kind of the worry. But I don't know. I feel like we got Bladea, who has a high ceiling, Costa, high ceiling, Barcelos, high ceiling, Sabatini, high ceiling, Torres, high ceiling, Quinones, knockout or bust. Not knockout or bust, but knockout high ceiling. Lawrence. So I'm fine getting all these people if I can't afford Tsarukyan.
Let's wait. I mean, and we just skipped 9,600. We skipped 9,700 for some reason. Bo Nickel was minus 2,000 to Jamie Pickett in recent memory, and the dude was like 96 or 97.
What the hell went on here? Why did they jump from 95?
There's no explanation. I got people all over my Twitter just going, "Oh, it's because he's gonna roll him." Like,
no, you know what it is? It's because they fucked up. They fucked up the Denny's Bondar salary, who, by the way, Bondar's upside in his fight, I'm going to say this right now. Denny's Bondar's upside in his fight is just as high as Tsarukyan. It's the same.
I would say he doesn't have the same ceiling, but yeah, he's got, if they both win, he's probably within 10 points.
Yeah, it's not that different considering.
Why not just make him 10K like at this point? Like, what are we even doing here?
They almost took him out of the mix. You need a bunch of underdogs to really smash for this to work. And he's got to absolutely crush. I would say he needs to score the highest score. He's got to get the Frivola 10 takedown.
Exactly. And this ain't Matt Frivola.
No, I don't know that Neto BJJ is like better than. I think Matt Frivola beats Silva also. But it is a different opponent. And
it's just the fighting style. Yeah,
it's a different opponent. So again, Tsarukyan, will I play his opponent? No. I'm going to full fade Joaquim Silva. Although he's not terrible, but I will full fade him in this fight because Tsarukyan's no joke. Will we be able to afford Tsarukyan? I will say this. If I have the salary, I'm definitely going to try to get him in there over some of these others. But I don't think it's a priority to play any of these guys. And I can go right down to Pat Sabatini and that crew and maybe not have to punt as hard. I think there's lots of ways to build lineups where you can ignore most of these 9K guys. All right.
I agree. I agree completely this week for sure.
Yeah. You can ignore a lot of them. And we got a main event here that is helpful in the upper echelons because we've got effectively 2 mid-salary guys that will give us potentially 5 rounds of striking. Let's see the fight goes the distance is a solid minus 175. So the odds makers are saying 5 rounds of action with Vettori and Cannonier, right? 5 rounds of goodness. Effectively a pick'em fight. I do have a play on this fight, an official play, but before I give that out, Big Marley, how do you see this one playing out stylistically?
I think it is a pretty close striking match throughout all 5 rounds. I think if we are getting 25 minutes of striking, we could go to the judges and just not even know who's going to get their hand raised. But on average, I like Vettori more in that case to land higher volume. He's impossible to knock out, it seems like, and that's the best part about Cannonier is his power. So if he's not knocking out Vettori, I just don't feel great about him winning a 5-round striking match. But if I'm Vettori's coach, I'm wanting him to look for takedowns in each round, and I think we can make it a clear win. And when Vettori wins 5-round fights, he scores very well on DraftKings. So for me, it's not Vettori or pass, but it's leverage on Vettori, underweight big time on Cannonier. I think Cannonier could win with 80 points and just not make the optimal lineup, where I don't think that's a worry for Vettori. If Vettori wins, I think he's more 100 points or more. So I like that, and that's who I'm picking to win. So Vettori will be one of my higher owned fighters on the card.
What do you think the ownerships are going to be on this fight like in tournaments?
I'll probably start with like 45% Vettori, 37% Cannonier, and then start adjusting from there.
Yeah, I feel that. Monk, anything to add on this one?
Yeah, for me, there's only one side for DraftKings, and it is not the Cannonier side. Who and I can handpick whatever stats you want. They are both 3-1 in 5-round middleweight fights. Vettori is completely outscoring his opponents from absolutely everywhere. Inside the distance, it's 4.5 to 1. Cannonier, 2.2 points a minute. You say, okay, what about in his last 5? 2.07 points a minute. Well, what about his UFC career? 2.19 points a minute. This dude never scores well, never makes the optimal lineup. 84 points per win on average in those 5-round middleweight fights. Meanwhile, Marvin Vettori, the complete opposite. This dude is at 135.6. Both guys only give up 85 per loss. So that is kind of holding me back a little bit here. But I absolutely love Vettori. He controls 95% of all the grappling time he's involved in. 80 strength of schedule, which is the best number on the entire card over the last 5. And we get him at a dog price of $8K. So I love Vettori here. Cannonier appears to be, at least statistically, the Derek Lewis of the middleweight division. And he just doesn't even land knockouts. You don't even get that huge round 1 upside with Cannonier. He just does not score well ever. And I don't think it's going to be against Marvin Vettori either. So give me all the upside of Marvin Vettori at the cheaper price. And I don't know. I mean, if Cannonier's 30-some% owned, like you said, I'm gonna have like 10-15% maybe. Like I see no reason to play this guy, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I was thinking around 10%. To be honest.
Listen, it's a 5-round fight. If there's a reason, he's
scoring 84 in 5. These are all 5-round fights.
Yeah, but this is what you can expect. He put up 54 against Adesanya. You add the 30. It's an 84, and at 8,200, there is a good chance that a mid-80 score is enough.
God, he scored 74 in a 5-round win against Gaston.
That's what I mean. I don't know. 14 fights. Even if 2 or 3 dogs win, that is nowhere near good enough, in my opinion, to make the optimal.
There was a knockdown in that one too. Listen, I'm going to take it a step further. And there was a knockdown in that fight. I'm going to take it a step further. I bet Vettori here. It's one of my biggest bets of the year. So it's one of my bigger plays of the year. I open the fightodds.io and I see the numbers and I'm going, is this a mistake? Did they screw this up? The reason being Vettori is fighting for titles. Okay. And he's having close fights with Izzy Adesanya. He's having close fights with Robert Whittaker, Bobby Knuckles. Bobby fucking Knuckles.
The real true king of the division, Roman Dolidze.
Yeah, Homan, he's looking good. He's beating Homan Dolidze. Right? It's no knock against the guy for only scoring 72 fantasy points.
He probably should have lost that fight though. I remember getting him at like plus 400 live and just being glad that the judges screwed it up.
That is fair as well. But Dolidze is a really different opponent because Cannonier is a guy that you want to get a takedown against and is not very good at stopping them, right? And Vettori he got 4 takedowns against Adesanya. I fully expect him to go for takedowns over the course of this fight and put rounds in the bank. And if his chin holds up like the way it has for his entire career, if he remains the blockhead, listen, you know who else was a fucking blockhead until he got knocked out? What's his name? Drew Dober. Like, I don't care who you are. Sometimes then you just get knocked the fuck out. So that is a theme with Vettori. He doesn't get knocked out, but hey, let's ride the good chin while we can. The other thing is the other thing, and this is, listen, you might say, Kevin, your analysis is worthless. You're just a fantasy football man out there looking at MMA fights. But this dude is 39 years old, Cannonier. Right. And basically on the tail end of his career, he's not, what's he doing? Right. Where Vettori still is 29, still
10 years,
top of the league, still a guy who wants to fight for a championship. Cannonier is not here to fight for a champ. He knows, all right, listen, I'm 39. I'm fighting to hopefully get a couple more fights on the contract and, bank a couple more $50,000 bills before my career is done. Whereas Vettori is still on the ascendant to me. So you give me a 39-year-old guy against a 29-year-old guy who's on the ups, who has beaten everybody except for effectively number 1 and number 2 in the division. That's number 1 and that's number 2. Like, what are we talking about here? Why is this line the way it is? Big Marley. Is this an all-in max bet season Big Marley bet on Vettori? Has that been put out for subscribers over at bigmarley.com? BigMarleyMMA.com?
I would hope the line wouldn't have moved like it moved if that was a max bet for me. But no, I'm eyeing them. I might have a play on them by the time the fight starts.
Let's see what my bet moved. Oh, wait. It went the other way. Apparently, when I put a heavy bet on someone, DraftKings is like, go with it. Make it worse. I'm going with Vettori here. I think you got to play both sides. But if Vettori is going to be 45% owned on this card, I'll probably personally be in the 60 to 70% range. I'm going to go over the field on him. I'll have the rest on Cannonier just in case. Most of the rest of my exposure, I will put it on the other dude. But I think Vettori takes this one, and I have a play on him at minus 115 odds. Big Marley puts that play out. This thing's going to minus 150. So you got to be on it early. You got to get the Geek play. I don't move the market yet. All right, boys.
Love it.
That's going to do it for the breakdown. We got our kill shot. It's time for the kill shot. And again, reminder, if you've enjoyed the breakdown, guys, you're watching this, you're out there, it costs you nothing to hit the like button. Share it with your friends. Drop a comment. Let us know who you think is going to win this. As a matter of fact, let's do a contest. Drop a comment. Tell us who you think is going to win the main event, Vettori Cannonier. And if it's Cannonier, put your explanation, rip on the Geek while you're doing it. We're going to pick one of you guys to give you a free month of DFS Army. Or as a matter of fact, if you're not a DFS Army subscriber already, we'll give you a free month of VIP. We'll pick somebody out. And if you are a subscriber, you don't get a refund. We don't do that. All right. Once we get the money, we never give it back. But I will send you a DFS Army t-shirt. We'll pick one commenter and we'll send a DFS Army t-shirt out. Little DFS Army action. Little swag, little sweezies. So we're at the point where we do our kill shot. That is an underdog play that will help us win. Last week, my kill shot. All right. What were your kill shots last week? I think I disallowed Dubronx, although we all loved Dubronx. And he was my official kill shot for the contest that we're in, which I am running away with. Might as well
I had Anders, who scored exactly his floor.
Ugh. That was great. Anders. Yeah. That was
40-some points, but still.
Not a good one. No. Jasmine was my girl on the kill shot on the show. She did what I expected her to do. Talked about fuck Miranda Maverick. Overrated. Big Marley, who was your kill shot last week?
I think Dubronx, of course, is my official one, but Fugit. So I lost on mine.
Ooh, yeah. But a wise call. If he wins, he breaks the slate. And my girl Jasmine, I think she was in the nuts, but like in a weird way. Like she didn't score very well.
Yeah,
so anyway. And by the way, I loaded up on Belbita. So I was going to say, as soon as we found out about the Maria Oliveira, reality show nonsense, I just loaded up on Belbita, bet her, did the whole deal. But that was really Saturday afternoon. It was like a little too late for the show. So let's talk about our kill shot for this week. We want an underdog that will help you win the tournament this week. I got to keep it going. But I'm going to pass it over to you guys first. Don't take my guy. But Big Marley, who you on?
I'll say Vettori and Bondar don't count. But if they did, I would.
Bondar you can't because he's the favorite. Yes, but I love Bondar. Let's get that out of the way.
So with them out and trying not to take yours.
Yes, and you know who mine is.
I'm picking to lose. I'll take Lucas Almeida, possible first-round knockout.
Okay. Lucas Almeida, plus 145 underdog. If he gets that knockout, he is in the nuts. That'll get there. Monk, where are you going with this one? Don't take my guy. I don't
remember who your guy was, so I'm going to say mine slowly and watch your face. I'm going to go with Nicholas Mota. I'm going to go with Nicholas Mota.
Okay.
7,300 over Manuel Torres.
I like it. And I don't think he will be high owned either. That is a perfect kill shot. If he wins, it should be a kill shot. Striking battle. Nicholas Mota could totally win. I'm going with Felipe Bunes.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Against Zalgas. Because Zalgas is never somebody you want to lay any sort of minus dollars on. You get his opponent for plus money. I'm not 100% convinced that this one will be a great DraftKings scoring fight. Kind of doesn't seem like it would be, but I do like Bunes to get the win. And I think I'm going to call it the fight of the night. There's a few all-in fights on this card that I think need to be mentioned. I think if you're watching this card, you need to have a piece of Lawrence or Argueta. You just need it. I think you should probably have Dennis Bondar in your lineup just in general. And then there's one more fight here. Yeah, I think it was Pat Sabatini. Just a lot of crazy takedown lunatics that will score well on this card. So a lot of all-in fights, some serious fades here. Now, I'll be back later in the week, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I don't want to mix it all in one. I've got a prize picks over, under, more than, less than breakdown ready to go for this one. That'll be out either tonight, or today is Wednesday, so tonight or tomorrow. 4 or 5 plays on prize picks. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit the notification bell. Sign up at DFS Army. We got the promo going. Summer 50% off VIP. Get in there. Lawrence is a fraud, according to Vince. That means a little bit Dan Argueta action for Vince. I'm assuming his kill shot will be Argueta. We'll find out in the DFS Army Discord. You got to be part of the Discord to get all the goodies. So make sure you sign up at DFS Army as a VIP. Join us in the Discord. Get the chat. All that good stuff going on. We will see you guys next time. For Monk, for Marley, for Geek. Take care, everybody. Good luck this week.